My divorce was supposed to become final the next morning. That afternoon, I stood outside my wife's hospital room and heard her say she had never betrayed me. Then, she said she still loved me, and I realized I might have destroyed our marriage over a truth I had never actually heard. My name is Ryan Cole, and I was 34 years old when I nearly ended a marriage that had lasted 9 years. My wife, Megan, was 31, and by that point we had been living apart for almost 3 months. We were not screaming at each other anymore. Somehow, that made everything feel worse. The final hearing was already scheduled. The paperwork was ready. Our lawyers had exchanged the last documents, and neither of us had asked for more time. I had convinced myself that ending the marriage was simply the last honest thing we could do. Then, my phone rang shortly after 4 that afternoon. I was sitting in my office when I saw the hospital number. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail because I assumed it was a wrong number. Then, something made me answer. A nurse asked whether I was Ryan Cole. I said yes. She told me Megan Cole had been brought in after a minor traffic accident near her office. Another car had struck the side of hers at low speed while she was pulling through an intersection. Megan had not suffered any major injuries. She was conscious, speaking clearly, and expected to be released later that evening. However, she had been dizzy after the impact, so the doctors wanted to observe her for several hours. Then, the nurse explained why she had called me. I was still listed as Megan's emergency contact. I stared at the wall across from my desk while the nurse continued speaking. I had spent almost 3 months learning how to remove myself from Megan's life. Yet one old line on a medical form had pulled me right back into it. I asked whether Megan had anyone with her. The nurse said one of her co-workers had arrived. That should have been enough for me to stay where I was. Instead, 20 minutes later, I was driving toward the hospital with Megan's phone charger, a clean sweater, and the small canvas bag she always used for overnight trips. Those things were still at our house because she had left so much behind when she moved into a furnished apartment across town. I told myself I was only being decent. After 9 years, I could not let the last thing I did as her husband be signing divorce papers. The hospital was busy, but not chaotic. Nurses moved through the halls with the steady pace of people who had seen every kind of panic before. I found Megan's room on the 3rd floor and walked toward it carrying the canvas bag against my side. The door was partly open. I heard a woman speaking inside. I recognized the voice immediately. It belonged to Sophie Grant, one of Megan's closest friends from work. Sophie had been at our house for birthdays, summer cookouts, and more than one holiday dinner. I slowed down and raised my hand to knock. Then, Megan spoke. I never gave Derek any reason to think I wanted him. My hand stopped inches from the door. Sophie answered quietly. I know that. I was there for most of it. My stomach tightened. Derek Vaughn. For almost a year, that name had followed my marriage like smoke under a locked door. I had seen his name on Megan's phone. I had watched him stand too close to her at company events. I had seen him bring her home after midnight. I had also seen enough messages to know he wanted more than a professional relationship. For months, I believed Megan had eventually wanted the same thing. Inside the room, Sophie asked the question that had lived inside my head for nearly a year. Then why does Ryan think you chose Derek? Megan did not answer immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded tired in a way I had never heard before. Because I let him believe it. I felt something cold move through my chest. Sophie lowered her voice. Why would you do that? Megan answered after a long pause. Because by then, Ryan had already decided I was gone. Every time I tried to explain, he looked at me like he was waiting for a confession. I stood motionless in the hallway. Then, she said the words that changed everything. I never cheated on my husband. I never kissed Derek. I never wanted Derek. I still love Ryan. And tomorrow I am probably going to lose him anyway. I forgot about the bag in my hand. I forgot about the people walking behind me. For nearly a year, I had wanted one clear answer from my wife. Now, I was finally hearing it, and she had no idea I was there. To understand why those words nearly broke me, you have to understand what the previous year had looked like from where I stood. Megan worked in corporate marketing for a medical equipment company in Atlanta. She was good at her job because she understood people quickly and could stay calm under pressure. She also had a way of making a room feel warmer without trying. That was one of the first things I noticed when we met. I worked in commercial property management, which sounded more impressive than it felt on most days. My job involved budgets, contractors, maintenance schedules, tenant problems, and a great deal of time spent fixing problems before they became expensive. For most of our marriage, our careers fit around each other. Then, both of our jobs changed at almost the same time. I took over several large properties after my regional manager resigned unexpectedly. Megan joined a new national account team that traveled often and worked under constant deadlines. We told each other the pressure was temporary. What we called temporary lasted 6 months, and then it stretched into a year. The first time I met Derek Vaughn, I disliked him within 30 seconds. That probably sounds unfair, but some people announce their intentions without saying anything directly. Derek had that kind of confidence. He was 33, tall, polished, and always dressed as if someone might photograph him unexpectedly. He had the kind of smile that made every conversation feel like he was testing how much charm he could get away with. We met at a company dinner Megan asked me to attend. Derek shook my hand firmly and said, "So you are Ryan. Megan talks about you." The words were harmless. The way he looked at her afterward was not. Megan seemed to notice because she immediately changed the subject. At dinner, Derek found reasons to involve himself in almost every conversation Megan had. When she stood to speak with a senior manager, he moved closer. When she returned to the table, he pulled out her chair before I could reach it. None of those actions meant anything by themselves. Together, they bothered me. On the drive home, I asked Megan whether Derek always acted like that. She gave me a tired smile. Like what? Like he is auditioning to be everyone's favorite person. She laughed. He is ambitious. He thinks networking is a personality. I remember feeling relieved because her answers sounded dismissive. Then, 2 weeks later, Derek started appearing on her phone more often. Most of the messages were clearly about work. A presentation had changed. A client wanted revisions. A flight had been moved. Still, there were other messages that did not need to be sent. Hope you made it home safe. You looked exhausted today. You should let somebody take care of you once in a while. The first time I saw one of those messages, Megan was sitting beside me on the couch. She read it, rolled her eyes, and locked the phone. I asked, "Does he always text you like that?" She said, "Sometimes. I usually ignore it." I should have told her clearly that it bothered me. Instead, I said, "Do whatever you want." That sentence became one of many small mistakes. Megan looked at me for a second, then turned back toward the television. Neither of us understood how much damage four careless words could create. Derek kept pushing. He bought coffee for the entire project team, but always remembered Megan's exact order. He offered to carry her laptop bag through airports even when she told him she could handle it. At meetings, he saved the seat beside him. At company dinners, he found excuses to join whatever group she was standing with. Once, during a conference in Dallas, he asked Megan to have a drink with him after the rest of the team went upstairs. Megan told me about that one herself. She was unpacking when she mentioned it. He asked if I wanted a drink downstairs. I looked at her. "Just the two of you?" "Yes." And I told him no. Her answer should have reassured me. Instead, I asked why he thought it was acceptable to ask. Megan stopped folding her clothes. "You would have to ask Derek. Maybe he thinks you are interested." Her face changed just enough for me to realize I had wounded her. "Do you think I am interested?" I did not answer quickly enough, and that hesitation became another mistake. She finished putting away her clothes without saying anything else. For several weeks, Derek disappeared from our conversations. He did not disappear from Megan's work. That distinction mattered more than I understood. Megan began traveling almost twice each month because her team was preparing for a major product launch. Derek worked on the same account, so he was often assigned to the same cities. The itinerary kept changing, but the same cities returned again and again: Chicago, Dallas, Miami, and Charlotte. Every time I saw another itinerary, I felt my patience thinning. One evening, Megan came home and found me looking at a printed travel schedule she had left on the kitchen counter. I pointed to Derek's name. "He is going again?" She set down her purse. "It is the same project, Ryan. You could ask to be moved." I already talked to my manager. That caught my attention. "What did he say?" "He said staffing is tight right now." I asked whether she told her manager why she wanted to move. Megan hesitated. "Not everything." "What does that mean?" "It means I told him I would prefer another account." I became frustrated. "If Derek is making you uncomfortable, why not just say that?" Megan's expression hardened. "Because I am trying to handle my job without turning this into a public mess." "You mean without turning it into a problem for him?" "That is not what I said." The argument ended there, but the feeling did not. I began watching the situation more closely. I hated doing that. I had never wanted to be the husband who checked his wife's phone or counted how many minutes she spent talking to another man. I did not check her phone, but I did something almost as damaging. I watched her until every late arrival felt suspicious and every business trip felt personal. Every time Derek's name appeared on her screen, I noticed. Then came the night he drove her home. Megan had flown back from Chicago, but severe weather delayed the flight for several hours. By the time the team landed, it was close to midnight. She texted me that transportation from the airport was a mess. I offered to come get her. She said it was not necessary because several coworkers were sharing rides. I went to bed, but could not sleep. Shortly before 1 in the morning, headlights crossed our bedroom wall. I looked through the window. A dark sedan had stopped in front of the house. Megan stepped out of the passenger side. Derek got out behind her. He walked around the car, removed her suitcase from the trunk, and rolled it toward the front steps. I was already downstairs by the time she opened the door. Derek saw me standing behind her. He smiled. "Hey, Ryan. Long night." I looked past Megan at the empty car. "Where is everyone else?" His smile faded slightly. "We dropped them off first." Megan closed her eyes for a moment. "Ryan, please." Derek handed her the suitcase. "I will see you Monday." I said nothing. He returned to the car and drove away. Megan shut the door behind him. I asked why she had not told me she would be alone with him. I was not alone with him until the last 20 minutes. That is still alone. She looked exhausted. We dropped Sophie off first because she lives closest to the airport. Then Marcus. Then me. You could have called me. I did not want you driving across the city after midnight when I already had a ride. With Derek. With my coworkers, Ryan. He was the only coworker standing in our driveway. Megan stared at me. Then, she said, "I cannot do this tonight." She carried her suitcase upstairs. I followed her. "You cannot do what?" "This conversation. That is convenient." She turned around. "I have been traveling for 14 hours. I am tired, and I do not want to defend myself for getting home safely." I remember the exact sentence I said next. "You seem to defend him pretty quickly." Megan looked at me as if I had slapped her. Then, she walked into the guest room and closed the door. She slept there that night. Within 2 months, sleeping separately became normal. The worst part was that neither of us officially decided to live that way. It simply became our new routine. Megan stayed up working late. I started waking early and leaving before she came downstairs. When we were both home, we discussed groceries, bills, schedules, and maintenance around the house. We stopped discussing us. Meanwhile, Derek kept pressing. I learned later that Megan had become much more direct with him than I ever knew. At a conference in Miami, Derek waited near the elevators after dinner. He asked whether she wanted to walk along the waterfront. Megan said no. He told her she worked too hard. She told him good night. He followed her toward the elevators and said Ryan did not seem to appreciate how much she carried. That crossed a line. Megan stopped and looked straight at him. "Do not talk about my husband that way." Derek tried to laugh it off. She did not. She stepped into the elevator and called Sophie before the doors closed. Megan told me none of that until much later. All I saw was that she came home from Miami quieter than before. I asked whether the trip went well. She said, "It was fine." I asked whether Derek behaved himself. She said, "I handled it." Those 3 words made me angrier than they should have. I heard secrecy when she was trying to describe boundaries, and neither of us explained what we meant. A few weeks later, flowers arrived at Megan's office. They were white lilies rather than roses, which somehow made the gesture feel more deliberate. There was no romantic message attached, only a small card that said she deserved something beautiful after a difficult week. Megan knew immediately who sent them. She called Derek and told him never to send her anything personal again. Then, she asked the receptionist to send the flowers back. Sophie witnessed the entire thing. I found out about the flowers differently. That evening, Megan left her work bag beside the kitchen island. The card had fallen into one of the side pockets. I saw Derek's name at the bottom. When Megan came downstairs, I was holding it. She froze. "What is that? You tell me." She took the card. I sent the flowers back. "What flowers?" Her expression told me she realized how bad the situation looked. "He sent flowers to the office. And you did not think I should know?" "I did not want to bring him into this house again. He is already in this house." "No, Ryan. He is in your head." The sentence hit me hard. I said, "Maybe because he keeps showing up everywhere you are." I cannot control where my coworker gets assigned. You can control what you tell me. Megan's eyes filled with anger. So can you. I did not understand what she meant. Instead of asking, I walked away. That became our pattern. One person said something incomplete, the other filled in the missing meaning, and then we both reacted to assumptions as if they were facts. Derek noticed the distance between us. I believe that encouraged him. He became more confident. One afternoon, Megan left her phone charging in the kitchen while she showered. A message appeared on the screen. I did not touch the phone because the preview on the screen was enough. You deserve someone who actually sees you. I stared at those words until the screen went dark. When Megan returned, I told her Derek had messaged. She picked up the phone, read it, and deleted the message. That action changed everything for me. Why did you delete it? Because I do not want it. You could have shown me. You just saw it. I saw one line. Megan placed the phone on the counter. I am tired of having Derek involved in every conversation we have. Then stop giving him access to you. Her voice rose. I have. Obviously not. She looked at me for several seconds. Then, she asked, what exactly do you think I am doing? I should have answered carefully. I did not. I think you like the attention. Megan's face went completely still. That was the moment I wish I could erase. She neither shouted nor cried. She simply picked up her phone and walked upstairs. The next morning, she left for work before I woke up. What I did not know was that she spent part of that morning meeting with her manager. She asked again to be removed from Derek's account. This time, she explained that his personal attention had become unwelcome. Her manager promised to look into it. Megan also sent a written request to Human Resources. She documented the flowers, the personal messages, the invitation for drinks, and Derek's comments about our marriage. She did all of that before I ever mentioned divorce. I did not know because she never told me. She later told Sophie why. If Ryan only believes me because Human Resources puts it in writing, then what do we even have left? Sophie told her that was pride talking, and Megan agreed without changing course. I had my own pride, and I was doing nothing too. Our marriage continued shrinking. I stayed later at work because the house felt uncomfortable. Megan interpreted that as proof I did not want to come home. She stayed later at work because she dreaded another argument. I interpreted that as proof she wanted to be somewhere else. We were both collecting evidence for the wrong conclusion. Then came the Charlotte trip. This was the trip that convinced me our marriage was finished. Megan's company held a 3-day planning meeting at a large hotel near the city center. Sophie was scheduled to attend, but her mother became ill the night before the flight. That left Megan traveling with Derek and 2 other co-workers. On the second evening, I called Megan shortly after 9. She did not answer. I called again 20 minutes later, but she still did not answer. She returned my call close to 10. There was noise behind her. I asked where she was. At dinner. With who? The team. I heard Derek laugh somewhere nearby. My chest tightened. Of course. Megan became quiet. What is that supposed to mean? You know exactly what it means. No, Ryan. I really do not. You are at dinner with a man who has been chasing you for months. I am at a table with 6 people. Then why didn't you? Answer. Because my phone was in my purse. That is convenient. She inhaled slowly. I am not doing this from a restaurant. I said, you never want to do this anywhere. Then, I ended the call. Later, I learned what happened after that. Derek noticed Megan was upset. He followed her into the hotel lobby after dinner. He told her she deserved better than a husband who treated her like a suspect. Megan stopped walking. She told him clearly that her marriage was none of his business. Derek apologized. Then, he said something worse. If things end with Ryan, you should know I would never make you feel invisible. Megan stared at him. Then, she answered in a voice loud enough for 2 coworkers nearby to hear. There is no version of my life where my marriage ends and you become the replacement. She walked to the front desk and asked whether another room was available on a different floor. The hotel moved her that night. The next morning, she emailed her manager again. I learned those details much later. At the time, all I knew was that my wife had been at dinner with Derek while my calls went unanswered. That was the version I carried home. When Megan returned, I was waiting in the kitchen. I had not planned a speech. I had not even decided what I wanted. She walked in, saw my face, and set her suitcase down. I asked, is there something you need to tell me? She looked tired. What do you mean? Do you want him? The question hung between us. Megan closed her eyes briefly. Ryan, it is a simple question. No, it is not. It really is. She looked directly at me. I do not want Derek. I should have stopped there. Instead, I asked, "Do you like the way he wants you?" Megan's eyes filled with tears. She turned away before they fell. "I cannot believe you just asked me that. I cannot believe I have to." She faced me again. "Then maybe you have already decided who I am." I heard that sentence as surrender. She meant heartbreak. I said, "Maybe I have." That night, Megan slept in the guest room again. 2 weeks later, I contacted a divorce lawyer. I told myself I was not acting from jealousy. I told myself I was responding to reality. The truth was more complicated. I had become tired of feeling unwanted. Megan had become tired of feeling accused. Neither of us knew how to move toward the other without risking another rejection. When I finally told her I had spoken to a lawyer, she sat across from me at the dining table. She did not look surprised. "That hurt," I said. "I think we both know where this is going." Megan stared at the table. Then, she nodded. "All right." I expected anger or a fight, and some part of me probably hoped she would tell me I was wrong. Instead, she accepted it. That acceptance became the final proof in my mind. I thought, if she still loved me, she would fight. What I did not understand was that Megan was thinking almost the same thing. She told Sophie later that week, if Ryan wanted me to stay, he would not be preparing papers. We were standing on opposite sides of the same locked door, each waiting for the other person to open it. Neither of us reached for the handle. Megan moved into an apartment about 20 minutes away. We divided expenses. We spoke through our lawyers when necessary. Sometimes she came by the house when I was at work to collect clothes or personal items. She left our wedding photographs where they were. I noticed that. I pretended I did not. Derek continued working at the company, but by then Megan had successfully removed herself from most of his projects. She also stopped traveling alone with him. Human Resources had begun reviewing her complaints, although the process moved slowly. From my perspective, Derek simply disappeared because Megan no longer needed to hide anything. That interpretation seems ridiculous now. At the time, it felt logical. The week before our final hearing, Megan and I met at a coffee shop to sign the last financial documents. She looked thinner than before. There were dark circles beneath her eyes. I asked whether she was sleeping. She gave me a small smile. Not really. I almost asked more. Instead, I slid a document across the table. She signed it. When we stood to leave, Megan said my name. I turned. She looked as if she wanted to say something important. Then, she shook her head. "Nothing. I will see you at court." I watched her walk away. For some reason, that memory stayed with me all week. Then came the accident. Now, I was standing outside her hospital room hearing a truth I had never expected. Inside, Sophie said, "You need to tell him everything." Megan gave a quiet, exhausted laugh. "Tomorrow." "Yes, tomorrow." What would that change? At least he would know the truth. Megan was silent for several seconds. Then, she said, "I tried to tell him before." Sophie answered gently, "You tried to defend yourself. That is not the same thing." I leaned closer to the wall without realizing it. Megan's voice became softer. I was angry. Every time he looked at me, I could see that he thought I was lying. "Then you shut down." "Yes." "And Ryan shut down." "Yes." Sophie waited before speaking again. "What happened in Miami?" Megan sighed. "Derek asked me to go for a walk after dinner." I said no. Then, he started talking about Ryan, so I told him never to speak about my husband that way. "And Charlotte?" "He told me if my marriage ended, he would be there." "What did you say?" "That there was no future where Ryan disappeared and Derek took his place." I closed my eyes. Every suspicion I had carried for months started shifting. Sophie asked about the flowers. I sent them back. The messages? I deleted the personal ones after I told him to stop. The work trips. I asked to be reassigned 3 times. And Human Resources? I filed everything months ago. My hand tightened around the canvas bag. There was finally more than a feeling or an excuse. There was a pattern of actions I had never known about. Sophie asked, "Does Ryan know any of that?" Megan's answer was almost a whisper. "No, why not?" "Because I wanted my husband to believe me before a company investigation proved I was telling the truth." Sophie did not respond immediately. Then, she said, "That was pride." "I know. An expensive pride." "I know." Megan started crying, but it sounded different from the tears I had heard before. There was no anger left in her voice, only exhaustion. "I still love him, Sophie." My throat tightened. Megan continued, "I love our house. I love the way he makes coffee too strong. I love that he checks every door twice before bed." Sophie made a soft sound that might have been a laugh. Megan kept going. I love that he remembers my mother's birthday without needing a reminder. I love how safe I feel when he puts his hand on my back in a crowded room. I lowered my head. Those were ordinary things. They were also things I assumed she had stopped noticing years ago. Megan took a shaky breath. I never wanted Derek. I wanted my husband to come back to me. Sophie said, then tell him. Megan answered, tomorrow we are going to court. That is exactly why you tell him tonight. He will think I am saying it because I am scared. Are you scared? Yes. Then be scared and tell the truth anyway. I heard movement inside the room. I stepped back. For a moment, I considered walking in. I wanted to see Megan's face. I wanted to ask every question I had swallowed for the last year. Instead, I left. That choice probably sounds strange. I had just heard my wife say she loved me. Why would I walk away? Because I needed to know whether what I heard matched what had actually happened. For months, emotion had been driving my decisions. I wanted facts. I went home and opened my laptop. The first thing I searched was my old work email. Sophie had mentioned human resources, but something else from. The hospital conversation bothered me. Megan said she had asked to be reassigned 3 times. I remembered one evening when she forwarded me an email from her manager. At the time, I barely read it. I searched Megan's name. Dozens of messages appeared. Most were ordinary messages about travel schedules, insurance forms, and dinner reservations. Then, I found one from 8 months earlier. Megan had forwarded it without any message attached. The original email was from her manager. It confirmed that her request to leave Derek's account had been received. The wording was professional and careful. The manager said staffing limitations made an immediate transfer difficult, but they would revisit the assignment soon. I stared at the date. That email was sent before the Charlotte trip, before the flowers, before I contacted my lawyer. Megan had tried to leave Derek's project while I was still accusing her of enjoying his attention. I kept searching. Another forwarded message appeared several weeks later. This one confirmed Megan would no longer be required to attend certain client dinners where Derek was present. I remembered receiving that email. I also remembered why I did not read it. That day, one of my buildings had suffered a major plumbing failure, and I spent 12 hours dealing with contractors and angry tenants. I saw Megan's message late that night. I told myself I would read it in the morning. I never did. There were more messages, including a revised travel roster, meetings where Sophie had been added, and a note from Megan promising to call after landing because her schedule had changed. I had built a story in my head that Megan was hiding Derek. The evidence showed something different. She had been rearranging her work life to avoid him. Then, I found an email that hurt more than the others. It had been sent from Megan to me 7 months earlier. The subject was simple. Can we talk this weekend? I opened it. The message was only a few lines. She wrote that we had both been exhausted, angry, and distant. She asked whether we could turn off our phones Saturday afternoon and talk without arguing. I remembered that weekend because I had chosen to work, not from necessity, but because I wanted distance. I had answered her email with 4 words. Maybe next weekend. Busy. I leaned back in my chair. For months, I had remembered myself as the spouse trying to save something Megan had abandoned. The record in front of me was less flattering. She had not tried perfectly or clearly enough, but she had tried, and I had missed it. I kept going until I found an email from Derek dated 5 months before Megan moved out. Seeing his name made my stomach tighten again. Ryan, we do not know each other well, but I think Megan is struggling more than she lets people see. I know this may be inappropriate coming from me, but she still talks about wanting to fix things with you. I read it twice, then forced myself through it a 3rd time. The man I believed was trying to steal my wife had once told me she wanted to save our marriage. His message came before the clearest lines he later crossed in Miami and Charlotte, but I still could not know why he sent it. Perhaps he respected the boundary then, or perhaps he wanted to think of himself as decent. Either way, the email did not make him innocent. It showed that he had not created the distance between us. He saw it, and later he tried to use it. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark kitchen. For the first time, I stopped asking whether Megan had betrayed me. I started asking whether I had listened to her. The answer was painful because I had not listened nearly enough. I drove back to the hospital shortly before 8 that evening. Megan had already been discharged. Sophie had taken her home. I considered calling her. I did not. Instead, I went upstairs and opened the guest room closet. Most of Megan's clothes were gone. A few boxes remained on the top shelf. I took them down one by one. The first contained old photographs, and the second held tax documents and appliance manuals. The third contained a bundle of 12 unsent letters Megan had written over several months, each with my name across the front. I sat on the edge of the guest bed and opened the oldest one. Ryan, I do not know how to tell my husband that I miss him when he is sleeping 20 feet away. I stopped reading. For several minutes, I simply held the paper. Then, I continued. Megan wrote that she knew work had become overwhelming for both of us. She wrote that every conversation felt dangerous because we were both waiting to be misunderstood. She wrote that Derek had made things worse, but he was not the real problem. The real problem was silence. Another letter was dated after the Miami trip. She wrote that she had rejected Derek again. She wanted to tell me everything, but she was afraid I would hear the details as proof instead of rejection. She wrote, I should trust you enough to tell you anyway. Another letter came after the flowers. She wrote that she had sent them back. She wrote that she was angry with me for assuming she liked the attention. Then, she admitted something harder. Part of her had liked being noticed, not by Derek specifically, but by anyone. She hated herself for that feeling because she wanted the attention to come from me. That line hurt. It also made sense. I had been emotionally absent long before I admitted it. Megan had been lonely. Derek noticed. She did not choose him, but I could understand why his persistence became another wound between us. The final envelope was dated the same day I told Megan I had hired a divorce lawyer. My hands shook slightly when I opened it. Ryan, if you ask me to stay, I will. The rest of the letter was longer. She wrote that she had no affair to confess. She wrote that she was tired of trying to prove a negative. She wrote that she still loved me, but she could no longer tell whether I loved her or only remembered loving her. Then came the sentence that nearly stopped me. I do not want Derek. I want my husband back. I sat on the floor for a long time. I wish I could tell you that understanding everything made me feel relieved, but it made me feel ashamed. Relief came later, while that night belonged to shame. I had not been crazy. Derek really had pursued my wife. He really had crossed professional boundaries. He really had tried to use problems in our marriage as an opening. My mistake was not noticing him. My mistake was believing Megan's refusal to explain perfectly meant she had something to hide. Her mistake was believing love should survive without honest communication. Mine was believing trust could survive constant suspicion. Both of us had been wrong. The next morning, I arrived at the courthouse 20 minutes early. Megan was already there. She sat on a wooden bench outside the courtroom with her lawyer beside her. She wore a dark blue dress and had a small bandage near her hairline from the accident. When she saw me, her expression changed from guarded to afraid rather than hopeful. That hurt more than I expected. Her lawyer stepped away when I approached. Megan looked at me. How are you? It was an absurd question after everything. I am all right. She nodded. I heard. You came to the hospital. My chest tightened. Who told you? Sophie. I wondered whether Sophie knew I had heard them. Megan answered that question without me asking. She said you came by, but she did not see you. I sat beside her. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then, I said, I heard you. Megan turned toward me slowly. At the hospital? Yes. Her face lost color. How much? Enough. She looked down at her hands. I could see embarrassment, fear, and anger moving across her expression. Finally, she said, you should have come in. I almost did. Why didn't you? Because I needed to know whether what I heard was true. Pain crossed her face. The same wound appeared between us again. I continued before she could pull away. So I checked. Megan looked at me. I found the emails. She said nothing. I found the reassignment requests and the travel changes. Her eyes filled. I also found Derek's email to me. That surprised her. What email? The one where he said you still wanted to fix our marriage. Megan stared at me. I didn't know he sent that. I believe you. Those 3 words changed her face completely because, for the first time in months, I said them without hesitation. Megan looked away quickly. Tears ran down her cheeks. I gave her a moment. Then, I said, I also found the letters. Her head turned back toward me. You read them? Yes. All of them? Yes. She covered her mouth briefly. I waited. When she lowered her hand, she looked more exposed than I had ever seen her. Those were not supposed to be read. I know. Some of them were angry. I know. Some were unfair. So were some of the things I said. She took a shaky breath. The courthouse hallway continued moving around us. People walked past carrying folders and coffee. A clerk called someone's name down the hall. For us, everything felt strangely quiet. I asked Megan the question I should have asked months earlier. Did you ever want Derek? No, there was no hesitation. Did you ever kiss him? No. Did you ever meet him privately because you wanted something from him? No, I believed her. Then, I asked the harder question. Do you still want this marriage? Megan looked down. I want you, but I do not want the marriage we had. My throat tightened because I did not want that old marriage either. She looked at me again. I cannot go back to being afraid every time your face changes because someone's name appears on my phone. I understand. And I cannot keep important things from you because I think you should trust me without knowing the facts. I understand that too. She wiped her cheek. What are you saying, Ryan? Before I could answer, the courtroom doors opened. Our lawyers approached. It was time. Megan stood, and I rose beside her before we walked inside together. The hearing was supposed to be simple. Our finances were already separated. We did not have children. There were no major property disputes. The judge reviewed the file and asked a few routine questions. Then came the final one. Did we both still want the marriage dissolved? Megan looked at me. I stood. No, Your Honor. Her lawyer turned toward me. My lawyer looked surprised but not shocked. The judge asked me to explain. I kept it simple. I said new information had come to light, and both parties needed time before making a permanent decision. The judge asked Megan whether she agreed. Megan stood beside me. Yes. The judge granted the delay without a dramatic speech, applause, or a miracle. The only thing we received was time. Outside the courtroom, Megan and I stood near the same bench where we had spoken earlier. Her lawyer left first. Mine gave me a look that said we would talk later. Megan held her purse with both hands. So what happens now? I answered honestly. I don't know. She nodded. That was probably the healthiest answer I had given her in a year. I continued. I do know one thing. What? I don't want to go back. Her expression tightened slightly. I touched her hand. I want to go forward. She looked at our hands. Then, she looked at me. So do I. We did not move back in together that day. I think that matters. A weaker version of our story would have ended with us walking out of court and pretending love had fixed everything. Love had never been the only problem. We needed better habits, honest conversations, firm boundaries, and a way to disagree without treating each other like enemies. 2 weeks later, we started marriage counseling. The first session was uncomfortable. The counselor asked each of us to describe when we first felt the marriage becoming unsafe emotionally. My answer was the night Derek drove Megan home. Megan's answer surprised me. She said it happened months earlier. It was the night she asked whether I still found her attractive, and I answered while reading a work email. I did not remember the conversation, but she did, and that was the point. The marriage had been slipping before Derek became important. Derek had been gasoline on an existing fire, but he was not the spark. During counseling, Megan told me everything about his behavior. Not because I demanded details. Because secrecy had become poison for us. She told me about Miami. She told me about Charlotte. She told me about the flowers. She told me about the times he offered rides, dinners, drinks, and private conversations. She also told me something difficult. There were moments when I liked being noticed. I felt my chest tighten. She saw it. Then, she continued. I did not like Derek. I liked feeling visible. That distinction hurt, but it also felt honest. Megan looked at me. I wanted that from you. I nodded. I know. No, I don't think you did. She was right. I had believed working hard was enough. I thought paying bills, planning for retirement, fixing the house, and showing up physically were obvious proof of love. Megan also needed connection through words, attention, and time. I had treated those things like optional extras when they were essential to her. Megan had her own lessons. She believed keeping Derek's behavior away from me protected our marriage from conflict. Instead, it protected the problem. She also believed my suspicion should disappear if I trusted her enough. That expectation was unrealistic because trust requires honesty, though it should never require interrogation or surveillance. 3 months later, Megan's company completed its review of Derek's behavior. He was removed from the account and formally warned about inappropriate personal communication with coworkers. Megan was offered a permanent transfer to another team. She accepted. Derek did not lose his entire career. He did not need to. This was not a revenge story. What mattered was that the company finally recognized the boundaries Megan had been trying to enforce. More importantly, Megan no longer carried that problem alone. If someone crossed a line, she told me. If something bothered me, I asked before assuming. Those changes sound simple. They were not. Simple habits can be difficult when pride has been practiced for years. 5 months after the courthouse, Megan moved home. We did not make a ceremony out of it. She brought back 2 suitcases first. Then, books. Then, kitchen things she insisted I had organized incorrectly. One Saturday afternoon, she carried in the framed photograph from our wedding that had been sitting in her apartment. I watched her place it on the shelf. She stepped back. Too much. I shook my head. No. That evening, we ordered pizza and ate at the kitchen island. For the first time in a long time, silence did not feel dangerous. It felt comfortable. There was a difference. Months later, I found the divorce file on my desk. At our request, our lawyers had filed the paperwork to dismiss the divorce case. I sat there looking at the papers. Megan walked into the room and saw them. Neither of us spoke immediately. Then, she asked, "Do you want to keep those?" I thought about it. Yes. She looked surprised. Why? Because I don't want to forget how close we came. Megan nodded. Fair. I placed the file in the bottom drawer. I kept the file as neither a threat nor insurance, but as a reminder. We had nearly ended 9 years of marriage because Derek stepped into a space we had stopped protecting. I treated Megan like she was the danger, while she treated silence like dignity. Both choices pushed us toward the same courthouse. Our marriage became stronger only after we stopped trying to prove who had been more wrong. There was enough blame for both of us, but there was also enough love left to rebuild. I still think about the hospital hallway sometimes. I remember standing outside that partly open door with Megan's canvas bag in my hand. I remember hearing her tell Sophie that she had never cheated. I remember hearing my wife say she still loved me when she believed I was nowhere near her. For months, I had wanted proof that Megan chose me. The truth was that she had chosen me repeatedly through quiet acts of loyalty I had failed to recognize. She rejected Derek, asked to leave his projects, returned his flowers, and documented his behavior while believing our marriage was dying. Megan should have told me the full truth much earlier, and I should have listened before turning fear into certainty. That became the lesson we carried forward. A good marriage cannot survive on mind reading. Love does not make assumptions harmless. Trust does not mean ignoring facts, and loyalty should never require silence. Today, when something feels wrong, we talk before the story in our heads becomes larger than the truth. Sometimes that conversation lasts 10 minutes, and sometimes it lasts 2 hours. One of us may still get angry, but anger is easier to repair than silence. Megan once told me the hardest part of our near divorce was realizing we had both been waiting for the other person to prove they cared. We kept setting silent tests for each other, then punished each other for failing tests neither of us knew existed. We do not do that anymore, or at least we try not to. A few weeks ago, Megan and I drove past the courthouse where our divorce almost became final. She noticed it first. Do you ever think about that morning? Sometimes. What do you think would have happened if you had not gone to the hospital? I looked at the road. That question still bothers me. I think we would have gotten divorced. Megan was quiet. Then, she reached across the center console and took my hand. I held hers. There was no grand speech. We did not need one. I went to that hospital believing I was visiting my wife for the last time. I thought the next morning would officially end everything we had built together. Instead, I stood outside her door and heard the truth she had been too hurt to tell me. My wife had never stopped loving me. She had never chosen another man. She had only stopped believing I would choose her back. And I had made the same mistake. We did not save our old marriage. That marriage had already broken under silence, pride, and assumptions. We built a different one. This time, we say the things we are afraid to say. This time, we ask before we accuse. This time, when the person we love starts feeling far away, we do not wait for a courtroom to bring us closer.